I'll just come out and say it. I don't have a cool, ominous intro planned like I normally do, because the character we're talking about today is quite frankly so badass that I don't even need a hyped up intro to introduce him. Today, boys, girls, everyone that may be in between, we are talking about the legendary and powerful Wolf of Saturn VI. Now, unfortunately, I was taking one of my mini breaks from Warframe while Nightwaves were first introduced into the game, which was around February 2019. And I actually missed the first couple volumes of Nightwaves, and unfortunately for me, that means I missed out on some of the coolest non-main plot lore in the entire game. I mean, looking back at it, the Wolf of Saturn VI and the Emissary are both incredibly interesting side stories that provide a lot of context about parts of the origin system that we aren't that familiar with. The one I first managed to partake in was actually the Glassmaker, which was honestly super good as well. But missing out on Wolf and Emissary absolutely pains me as someone who is a dedicated Warframe enjoyer. So now the best thing I can do is research their stories and talk about the Wolf in great detail. For this video, I actually fought the Wolf for the very first time. And oh boy, that's one strong dude. He was eating my bullets like those Canadian pigs were eating human remains. That might seem like a weird comparison, but look it up, guys. This serial killer named Robert Picton would murder his victims, then bring them back to his farm in Canada, and then hide the evidence by feeding the remains to his pigs. I mean, that's like insane. Like, how do you come up with that? You have to be so diabolical and evil. That guy sucks. And you might be wondering why I'm still talking about this in a Warframe lore video. And that would be a great point. Now let's get into the history of the Wolf of Saturn VI. Please like and subscribe for more random serial killer facts. And I guess for more Warframe lore too, I guess. Before we can talk about the Wolf, we've got to talk about the Saturn VI Penitentiary. We first hear about this prison from our sensual Nightwave host, Nora Knight. I mean, calling her sensual might be crazy because we just see her mouth. But dude, her voice, bro, W Nora Knight and W Warframe. Gotta love this shit, man. But anyway, she learns about the prison because the Wolf we're talking about today escapes from it. But let's not talk about him yet. Let's talk about why no one has ever heard of it and why no one has ever escaped before. The name Saturn VI is pretty descriptive of where the Saturn VI prison is located. It is 6 leagues deep into the gas giant Saturn. I had to look it up, but a league is equal to about 3.5 miles, and 6 leagues is about 20 miles, meaning that Saturn VI Penitentiary is located 20 miles deep from the surface of Saturn. For reference, the deepest point in the ocean here on Earth is the Mariana Trench, which is about 7 miles deep. So if you go about triple the miles deeper than that, you'd be coming up on Saturn VI. Now Saturn is much bigger than Earth, seeing as its diameter is 75,000 miles, but still, 20 miles deep into anything is no joke. Ask your mom. That was a terrible joke. Now the reason the prison was built inside Saturn wasn't just because it was hard to see, it's because it's virtually impossible to believe that a livable and reachable structure could actually be created that deep into Saturn. In reality, even approaching the surface of Saturn would result in death, due to the insane winds, which reach about 1,100 miles per hour, extreme temperatures, and the fact that a large amount of the atmosphere is occupied by ammonia. On top of that, the poles have extreme electrical currents that would likely short-circuit whatever transport device you're using to even get close to the planet. Now, Warframe doesn't accurately represent how planets are in the real world, with Uranus and Neptune being especially unrealistic. I mean, all of them are pretty unrealistic, but especially Uranus and Neptune. But anyway, when it comes to the realism of planets in Warframe, Saturn actually seems to be one of the most accurately portrayed planets, which means that I'm going to go ahead and say that how we understand Saturn to be in the real world universe is how it is also understood to be in the Warframe universe. And if we use that same understanding, it would make complete sense why Saturn VI was completely unknown and essentially impossible to escape from. Beginner would have had to develop a structure that resisted the increased gravity of Saturn, protected itself from the electrical currents from its poles, managed to resist damage from the intense winds, and somehow managed to ensure that no deadly, inhalable toxins found their way into the structure. Of course, if gas was getting into their structure, they would probably already be dead because there would be a leak somewhere. So, not only would maintaining a prison in Saturn be extremely difficult, it would also be incredibly difficult to travel to and find due to the fact it likely never remained in one spot for long, and how difficult it would be to actually fly a ship into Saturn, like inside of Saturn. Of course, those are also the same reasons it would be nearly impossible to escape. The last remaining comment I have about this is that the Saturn VI prison isn't really that relevant to anyone. I mean, the Corpus wouldn't care much about a prison inside Saturn, and in all honesty, neither would the Tenno. The only group of people who might be looking for a Grineer prison is the Still Meridian, and they already have their hands full with their own issues. So is there really that much of a surprise that no one's ever heard of it? It's incredibly well hidden, and it's not really worth searching for in the first place. The only reason that anyone might search for the prison is because the prisoners work on explosives and other weapons while imprisoned. You know, doing like prison league. But I mean, there's a lot more larger production Grineer facilities you would come looking for before Saturn VI. Anyway, that's me just like nerding out like crazy and getting way too deep into the actual logic behind Saturn VI, so I do apologize for that. Let's actually talk about the lore you guys probably came for now. I just like wanted to nerd out there. I thought it was just like so cool to have a prison hidden inside Saturn. That's just like, Warframe's cool, man. Much like the Grusdrag 3, the Wolf of Saturn VI wasn't always called the Wolf of Saturn VI. In fact, we actually don't know what his name was. But I suppose your name never really matters until you do something with it. And Wolf was the name chosen for him when he decided to do something. Much like how you guys know me by Cook, at this point, it is the name I'm most known by in the world. But of course, not my real name. I know I only have 2,000 subscribers, but I don't know 2,000 people in my normal day-to-day life. So in the same sense, Cook is the most important name that I go by because it's the name I'm most recognized by. Anyway, the Wolf wasn't always some badass who fought his way out of Saturn VI. He was actually the exact opposite of that, and if anything was considered a complete model prisoner that actually had favor with the Warden. This continued for some time, the Wolf living a mostly positive prisoner life, which is somewhat hard to believe that Grineer prisoners could have good lives based on how cruel they are, but the Wolf managed it somehow. At one point, Wolf began howling at night in his prison cell, and it's not really known why, perhaps in despair or desperation maybe. I would say that we can confidently determine why the Wolf started howling, however we just don't know the emotion associated with the howls. Since the Wolf was so well liked by the Warden Garn, I believe that Garn informed, or perhaps let it slip, that he was actually dealing with the Corpus, or at least one Corpus in particular, the infamous Alad V. This deal they had going on was that Alad V was granting Garn great riches beyond what a typical prison warden would ever receive, in exchange for Grineer prisoners that Alad V would then experiment on. I believe it's the most agreed upon theory that the Wolf figured that out, and the howls in desperation were for his lost brothers and sisters, and furthermore, like I said, I believe he was personally informed by Garn himself, whether by mistake or on purpose, due to how well they got along allegedly. Anyway, being experimented on by Alad V is a fate far worse than death. Honestly, I can't imagine a worse fate at all happening to anyone. That sick fuck always has some vile sick shit up his sleeve. Bro is an absolute monster. Anyway, knowing that his prison brothers were being experimented on obviously caused great distress in the Wolf, and it's eventually what led to him to break out of Saturn VI. I'm not actually sure how he broke out, because I imagine he didn't have any weapons or armor available to him. In the introduction, he's wearing large, powerful armor, but I seriously doubt they allowed him to be wearing Lieutenant Let Krell level armor while imprisoned. That would be straight up like fucking stupid. However, regardless of how he escaped, he managed to escape and somehow commandeered a ship to fly off from Saturn VI. However, escaping Saturn VI wasn't enough for him, and he went back and began attacking Jupiter, killing the Corpus that were experimenting on his brothers. He even went so far as to hack Corpus technology and leave messages demanding that Garn be brought to him. I imagine it didn't matter if Garn was dead or alive when it got brought to him, because in the end I'm sure that Wolf would make sure he's dead regardless. Before getting to Garn though, the Wolf went back to Saturn VI to break out more of his prison buddies. Now he had already broke some out with him when he first escaped, so when he came back for seconds he came with a force. While he didn't find Garn, he did increase the size of his pack, and they were now known as the Saturn VI Fugitives. And their goal was to slay Garn and end the diabolical dealings between him and the Corpus. However, before the Wolf of Wall Street was able to track down Garn and dispatch him, the Corpus sent him a message with details informing him where Garn was located. Because of this Corpus assistance, Garn was found and put down by the Wolf. However, what the Wolf didn't realize was that the Corpus had set a trap, and him and all of his pack were captured by Alad V and then experimented on, just like their brothers had been. Alad V was desperate for new test subjects, and while Alad V isn't necessarily a very moral guy, he would still rather test his experimental technology on Grineer instead of his own Corpus soldiers. What a good boss. And the technology he was testing for the Amalgam project was beyond experimental. In fact, it was beyond anything that LV has ever tested or used before. I think it's important to get into this story so you have a greater understanding of why this whole situation had ever developed and the deal between Garn and LV had been created. LV was down on his luck after the Zanuka project and the whole becoming infested thing, because it turns out becoming a literal monster is not good for your reputation. And the entire Corpus board was in a sense moving on from him, and he was incredibly desperate for a chance to prove his worth again, especially with how quickly Nef Anu was rising through the ranks. Out of nowhere, a great opportunity approached him by an old business partner of his named Regis. Regis was seen as a dumber guy by Aladvi, but he was very wealthy, and he brought an alleged piece of old war tech to present to Aladvi. Aladvi acknowledged that this piece of tech seemed to be based from Tau and not the old war, but I mean, Regis was dumb, so how would he know anyway? And it was irrelevant to him because of the potential that the object presented. Who cared where it came from, right? Who cares? It's awesome. It's a powerful object. Who cares about where it comes from, right, Aladvi? Right, Aladvi? You don't care where it comes from? Anyway, this caused Alad to quickly write up a contract with Regis, one that heavily benefited him and honestly screwed Regis. To Aladvi's surprise, Regis immediately signed the contract without question. However, Alad just summed up, it's just Regis being dumb, right? It's surprising he didn't even read the contract, but whatever, Regis is an idiot, right, Alad? Regis is just stupid, right, Alad? Anyway, after a board meeting with Regis, Aladvi began to question his business partner. His ideas he presented seemed insane, and he wasn't acting like Regis. He seemed more driven and more intelligent with, delusional ideals. After the meeting concluded, Alad swore that he saw something inhuman in Regis' eyes and behind his smile. Like the face he was wearing was a mask, and there was a true monster underneath. Alad went home and destroyed the contract, but it was too late. The monster had revealed itself. It was a mimic, a sentient able to warp its body to look like others, and now it had a hold of Aladvi, his labs, and his knowledge. Alad did whatever he could, and sent his entire military force after the sentients that were now essentially holding him and his city hostage. The Ropolists slaughtered his soldiers and showed that Aladvi and his corpus were no match for the sentient powers. At the threat of his own life and the destruction of the city he ran on Jupiter, Alad conceded to the sentients and began production on amalgams, a cross between sentients and biological peoples. This is the reason that Alad needed the Greener prisoners for testing, because he was creating an army for the sentients, and that's what happened to the wolf. He was infused with sentient juices. I don't know why that term was used by Noranite. Very questionable pick of words there. But anyway, after getting infused with all kinds of sentient juices, he became a slave to the sentient war machine. Who wrote this? I didn't say sentient juices. Noranite in Warframe said that, guys. I did not come up with that. That is ridiculous. Anyway, let's move on to the final. What the fuck? Also, it is important to point out that the wolf did actually break, control of Aladvi, but, we'll get into that in the next section. Wolf did actually fight back and release himself from the control of Aladvi at some point, even with his sentient powers, but as soon as the new war started, the wolf was recaptured by the sentients and used in the Narmir war machine. Even though he fought back so many times, from escaping Saturn 6 to even breaking out of the sentient and Aladvi control, in the end he still ended up controlled by Narmir. This is honestly a pretty depressing story. No matter what he seemed to do or how strong he got, Wolf just kept ending up a slave. I mean, then you take into consideration that he was probably imprisoned for something pretty stupid originally, and his whole life has just been a tragedy of errors. I don't know, not even errors, just of unfortunate circumstances. It's not really his fault. I don't know if there's a more depressing and sad story in all of Warframe. I mean, Cal even says that he must kill the wolf to free him of his pain, implying that he can't even be saved like a lot of people controlled by Narmir were. Anyway, guys, I honestly went a lot more into the lore of this than I initially thought I would, and I really hope you enjoyed it all. I absolutely love looking into all this, especially the random planet facts when looking into Saturn. I hope you guys did too. Anyway, make sure you become a member for some perks. To be honest, they aren't amazing, but they have like early access. You get emojis to use for the channel. You get access to our clan I created. It's just me and like one other guy right now, Sign Up King, let's go, that are working on the clan. I've been working on it though. It's coming along, okay? It's coming along. But yeah, there's some other stuff. I think I don't know. I don't remember. But basically, I launched the membership early. I mean, I don't know if I was ever going to watch membership. I ended up launching membership because I did crash my car. I don't have a car right now, so I would appreciate anyone who becomes a member because it does help me save up money for a new car. But of course, just watching this much into the video already helps a ton, like I always say. So thank you guys so much for watching. And of course, a humongous, ginormous, massive, ultra large, double decker with extra chips. Shout out to my 2 members right now, Jay and Sign Up King 5000. Thank you guys for becoming members. I really do appreciate it. Love you guys. Thanks you for the support. Finally, I appreciate everyone so much, not just Jay and Sign Up King, but they do get an extra bit of appreciation. But if you guys enjoy the video, please like and subscribe. Stay blessed, guys. Stay safe, guys. There's a lot of crazy things going on in the world right now, so everyone just please stay safe. And yeah, I hope to see you in the next one. Oh, and don't forget to comment. Let's boost it in the algorithm, boys. Bye.